what are the big trends that we're facing as a society and as a business community? It really does start with workforce, and everybody knows that we're in a workforce crisis right now in America. Workforce is going to be the #1 competitive issue that determines which parts of our country are winners and losers. Best I can see for the foreseeable future. I expect for the entire rest of my career and for the careers of many people younger than me, we're going to be talking about a workforce crisis. Part of that is just math. We have been growing our workforce at an ever slower rate. For 30 years, we've had declining workforce growth. The labor force itself has, from 90 to 2000, grew about 13%, about half that the next decade, and even less in the recent decade. So as our economy continues to grow, we're adding fewer people to our workforce. And there's a lot of reasons for that. When we look at the nation between 2010 and 2020, this is the slowest growth we've had since the 1930s. The birth rate is half what it was in the 1960s. So when you think of it, many of the people on this call were born, women were having 2 times as many children as they're having now. The orange on this slide shows all the counties in America that actually lost population during the last decade. And so other than large parts of the West, which grew, the rest of the country experienced a lot of job losses. You can see in North Carolina, the urban areas, when I was in school a long time ago, the Golden Crescent or the Piedmont Crescent continues to grow in North Carolina, as does the Southeast Coast, but the rest of the state is still struggling. And so trying to find enough population growth and labor force growth is going to be our issue. It doesn't get better, it gets worse. When we look at young people under the age of 18, 2 decades ago, we added 9 million of them. Last decade, we added 2 million of them. This last decade, we actually lost children. And so as we go into the next decade, those children that we didn't have will be the workers we won't have coming up. And so this is not the issue for 2021. This is the issue for the next whole generation that we're going to be dealing with. When you look at projected labor force population during this decade, you can see growth in Alamance and Guilford and Forsyth counties, and part of the core in Chatham and Lee, Harnett County, but a lot of the state is going to experience labor force decline or constriction. And so that will be one of those factors that everybody's going to be focused on and trying to figure out, how do we attract more workers? How do we retain young people? How do we train people for the jobs that we need in the future? COVID's made it worse. The impacts here changed some things that I don't think many people were expecting. So of the 25 million people who lost jobs last spring, about 1.7 million of them are now unemployed and looking for work. So there's a little under 2 million people trying to find those jobs out there, but 7.7 million of them are left the labor force. We have almost 8 million fewer workers than we had before, and we're trying to figure out, everybody's trying to guess what happened. Well, 2 things are likely. One is that if you look around the country, childcare service employment is down about 10% from pre-pandemic levels, which means that probably childcare availability slots are down about 10%. A lot of caregivers, mostly women in our society, can't go back to work because they can't find daycare anymore. The second major issue is a lot of people, mostly men, retired. They're under the age of 65, but they decided that they were done. We're done with the labor force. We might do something else, but we're not going to be in the pool of people for workers. Those 2 issues alone account for most of the crisis that we're in right now. That results in a heavy demand for new workers, a diminished supply. And so if you went to that first day of econ class, you know that means wages are going up. And in fact, they jumped faster in the last year than in the last 25 years before that. And so we're seeing wage hikes everywhere. That's manifested itself in a lot of other issues. One is mobility. In 2019, we had the lowest mobility on record, which meant people moving from one state to another. Since the pandemic, more people are moving. They're moving for job opportunities that are higher. They're moving for cost of living that are lower, more affordable housing. Also to be close to their family, and everybody's moving a little bit more. But the younger people under the age of 44 are moving in huge numbers. They're reassessing their life and they're moving around. Part of that reassessment has also come out in the I quit movement. It's a lot of people now are quitting jobs. A record 15 million workers quit their jobs since April of this year. You might say, well, why is everybody quitting? And I hear people say, oh, they're lazy or they're whatever. Main reason they're quitting, 2/3 say it's because they had a better job offer. And when you look at the quitters and what their job gains have been, professional service, real estate, a lot of the white collar jobs, big gains. This is the new wages that they're likely to get. So if you quit the leisure and hospitality industry, your new wages have not been that high. But if you went to another industry, a lot of people are quitting because there are lots more job opportunities in different industries. So we expect this to continue. Oops, sorry about that. Recent study that just came out, I think Essentia said 40% of people who currently work said they might leave their job in the next 6 months. So this jumble of people changing jobs is here to stay for the future. We've also seen a big business concentration and fragmentation over the last few years. For about 20 years, more and more people work for bigger companies. So about 67% of Americans work for companies of 100 employees or more. It's never been true that most people work for small business. Most new jobs are created during the churn for small business, but about 2 out of every 3 Americans work for a company of 100 people or more. That's more than it used to be, and there's a lot of reasons for that concentration. One of them being that entrepreneurship took a huge hit after the last Great Recession, the 2007 and 8 recession. People didn't have as much equity in their houses. Their 401ks went down. Banking got a little tighter. People were a little more scared, so they went to work for more stable companies. Well, what's happened during the pandemic is business formations have about doubled. And you've seen the Secretary of State in North Carolina say that we're setting records here. Everywhere across the country, people are setting records for new business formations. A lot of reasons. People have stimulus checks. People have more equity in their houses. Their 401ks went up, retirement accounts. But also a lot of people have made the decision that they want to have more control over their life. So you're seeing a lot more business formations, and that's a trend we think will continue at least for the next couple years.